the University of Arizona Bio5 Institute, we bring together hundreds of multifaceted experts that include world-class bioscientists, engineers, physicians, and computational researchers. This team science approach is designed to ignite creative solutions to the many complex biological challenges facing our families and communities, and has resulted in disease prevention strategies, promising new therapies, innovative diagnostics and devices, and improved food sustainability.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Science Talks, a conversation hosted by the University of Arizona's Bio5 Institute. My name is Lisa Romero.
And I'm Amy Randall Barber.
Today, we are with a special guest, and we're going to be talking about biomarkers. Biomarkers are measurable substances inside our bodies that give scientists and medical professionals a hint that we might have a certain disease like cancer or Alzheimer's, or have been exposed to a toxic chemical or infectious disease like COVID-19. Biomarkers are typically measured in blood samples or biopsies, which can range from a minimally invasive sample taken from the skin or a more invasive sample taken from within the body. Today, I'm really excited to be joined by the director of the University of Arizona's Little Sensor Lab, Dr. Judith Su. Dr. Su is an assistant professor of optical sciences and biomedical engineering, assistant research scientist in chemistry and biochemistry, and a Bio5 member, which we are using all the time for her expertise and knowledge. And we really love having her as a member in Bio5. So Dr. Su is looking to change the way we detect biomarkers with her tiny, non-invasive optical sensors, which we're going to learn more about today. Dr. Su, thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. So that was a really quick run through of a very interesting bio and path, diverse path with a lot of different sort of background experiences that you've had throughout your academic career and since. I mean, everything from mechanical engineering, to biophysics, to imaging, microfabrication. So can you, just start with, I guess, a little bit of a step back in terms of that diverse path, how much of that was sort of planned, how much of it was organic, and then, at what point did you kind of go, this is going to lead me to start a lab to develop small sensors to solve big problems?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think in the beginning, I chose mechanical engineering because, my dad was a mechanical engineering professor. And so that was what I had exposure to as a child. And so I saw the things he did and I thought that was great. And so, I really appreciate what engineers do for society. And so that was a natural step for me. And then as I was, studying mechanical engineering, it sort of organically, a lot of the interesting applications that people were doing were more bio-related. And so, people really wanted to obtain like a molecular level understanding of things. And so it sort of that part sort of organically developed into sort of a more biological direction. And then in terms of starting my lab, so that was something I've always wanted to do. Like the academic, path always appealed to me. And so, some people, they know kind of what they want to do. And I was one of those people. So for me, that was sort of an easy decision to make.
Well, it's really, that's very cool. I mean, it's cool that you had that role model in your father. And I do think that that's rare to, have that instilled in you early on and really follow that path and, led you right to where you maybe dreamed of being. And so I think, what I would love for you to do is to, talk a little bit about sensors. I mean, I think, those not in a scientific world might, they know what a sensor is on an electronic kitchen appliance or something like that, or in their car or But I think that it would be really helpful for you to kind of describe how you look at sensors, you know, what has been typical in the past in terms of what is available in terms of, you know, a biomedical application, and then sort of what your goal is in making your sensors different and unique.
And
Yes.
I might add the little sensor lab. Can you also describe exactly how small they are?
Yes, so I'll answer Amy's question first. So our sensors that we use are about 100 microns in diameter. So that's about the width of a human hair. So they're really, really small. That we're hoping to use them to have big impact on society. And so I really view sensors as a way that you can interact with your environment. And so I think, you know, probably the most common sensors that people are familiar with are, for example, like the pregnancy test. So, you know, you can go into any drugstore and get a bunch of pregnancy tests, you know, very cheaply nowadays. The other is probably for like a glucose sensor for diabetics. And then probably now with the pandemic, people are very familiar with pulse
COVID-19
oximeters.
test.
Yeah. So those are probably, I think, the three most well-known sensors and probably the most commercially successful sensors. Oh, and then of course now with COVID-19, you have all these rapid tests from Abbott Diagnostics that you can, you know, get from Walgreens or CVS, and those operate, you know, in a very similar way to how the pregnancy test operates. And the impact we're hoping to have with our sensors is we focus a lot on medical diagnostics and environmental monitoring. And so we look at biomarkers for, you know, diseases like cancer. We look at biomarkers for Alzheimer's. And then we're also really interested in, you know, environmental monitoring applications like air pollution or looking for toxic industrial chemicals. So I think, you know, people can see from incidences like Flint, where there is, you know, contaminated drinking water, how important it is to be able to get information about your environment, because it really affects your health.
How do you, you know, you're focused on that, and you're in your lab, and you're working, you know, working that diligently with your team, and you know, what are the steps you go through to, you know, keep moving the needle on, you know, smaller sensors, less invasive, faster detection with the combination of that? I mean, what are those sort of steps you go through as you're looking to do it, you know, better, more efficiently, faster? What is the process you go through?
So first, I try to keep myself really abreast of the current state of the art. So, you know, what are current technologies? How do we compare? And then, you know, in terms of, you know, how we make things, you know, smaller, faster, we do, like, for example, a lot of computational modeling, so we can really optimize our system. Like, how can we improve the sensitivity of our sensor? Are there, you know, particular geometries that work better? And so for there, I think we really try to be guided by theory and simulation. And then let's see, you said, you know, faster and smaller. So yeah, for that we're always looking at ways we can reduce our footprint. So, you know, so what's also great about it is, so since we, you know, rely on a lot of other technologies, like for example, electronics and whatever, these fields are also rapidly developing. So for example, when people make, you know, smaller, more lightweight batteries or something, these are always things that we can take advantage of when we're making, you know, more portable things. So it's really exciting to see, like, you know, maybe we don't work on building lasers, but perhaps, you know, people in the laser industry are working on building smaller, more portable lasers. And then that's something that we can adapt into our sensor technology. So, you know, we try to stay really on top of what are the latest advances, and try to follow a bunch of different fields to see what, you know, what we can use.
Do you find yourself collaborating often? And if so, how does that help you in your research?
So I think collaboration is definitely very key. We've benefited a lot from collaborations. You know, when we have great collaborators, we can go a lot further in terms of the impact that we can make. So, you know, one great collaboration we have is with the Bill Goddard group at Caltech. So they're a computational chemistry group, and we have this exciting project with them on screening drugs for COVID-19. And so this is an example of, you know, their expertise is, you know, their computational chemistry group. And so they can do virtual screening of like thousands of drug compounds. And so that's not our expertise. But then we can take that, combine that with our sensor expertise and use that to do drug discovery. And so I think that's really interesting. And we're also working with them to look for non-addictive opioids or opioid alternatives. So that's an example of where that's a field we really wouldn't have been able to do without them. And our experimental validation is helpful to them as well. And then we also collaborate with other groups, for example, on discovering new types of biomarkers, for example, like Lyme disease or ovarian cancer. And so those are examples where we work with groups that they're discovering new biomarkers, and then we're working at detecting those biomarkers at the earliest possible stages. So hopefully, before physical presentation of symptoms.
That is amazing. That's really, really, I think, what people want. That's what they are looking for. Definitely. To get ahead of disease, to know early on that they could be predispositioned to something, or something that they could maybe do prophylactically that could help them, or catch it early and treat it early, I guess is what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. The early detection is linked to better survival outcomes. So that's what we're really trying to do here. And then, of course, we also collaborate with other chemistry groups on making our sensor as selective as possible. So we have very sensitive sensors, but then we don't want it always giving us a signal when we're looking at things that we don't want to detect. So we only really want the signal from the biomarker and not whatever other random proteins in your blood, for example. And so for there, we collaborate with a chemistry group, Brian Stoltz's lab at Caltech, and they really help us make our sensors very, very selective.
Wow. And so speaking of the sensors, I was reading a little bit, and forgive me for my non-technical jargon, but one of your technical processes is called FLOWER, and that's an acronym for the process?
So our sensing system is called FLOWER, which stands for Frequency Locked Optical Whispering Evanescent Resonator. And so our sensing element is this little glass donut that's called a microtoroid optical resonator, and that's what is about 100 microns in diameter. And then FLOWER is the combination of that with electronics and other ways to sort of improve our signal to noise ratio. But that's our main sensing platform in our lab.
Okay. Yeah, it seemed really, really cool. It was saying that basically the light spins around in that donut piece and essentially touches the liquid in there. And I wrote down that it spins around 240,000 times in 40 nanoseconds. And it can send something up in like 30 seconds.
Yeah, exactly. So the light is essentially trapped within these little glass donuts, much like how light travels through an optical fiber, but like an optical fiber that's bent back on itself. And so it constantly goes around and around. And that's what gives us our high sensitivity, is because the light is continuously interacting with things that are bound to the surface of the sensor. And so every time it does that, it gives us some signal that we can read out. And yeah, that's the main basis for our technology. And we're hoping to apply it to like lots of different things. So like detecting COVID and, water quality monitoring, environmental monitoring, air pollution monitoring, all sorts of things.
I think that's one of the things I find most fascinating about your work, and others that are sort of in this space of developing technology that is just ever evolving and ever more precise. But what the thing I find most fascinating, and also I think as just a human being, brings me sort of excitement and hope, is that you talk about you're developing this technology and this system, and maybe you started out developing it to look at water quality or pollutants or whatever, but you then realize as you're developing it and you're collaborating with others, that there are so many other applications for disease, for for the environment. And that's really fascinating to me, because I think, again, for a non-scientist, perhaps you don't realize the cross-purposing of disciplines and thinking that can go on. You're not just solving one problem, you're creating technology that can solve a host of problems.
Yeah, I think that's the great thing about working in a collaborative environment is that, sometimes people will contact us when they hear about our technology and will bring to us applications that we never even thought of. And I really enjoy that part too.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I know you're not only doing the research, but having gone through this sort of early career path that you're now sort of coming to the end of, and you're established, and you're setting your future research goals. And I know you mentor people. I know you find it very fulfilling to be a mentor and sort of help others on that path. What are some things that people were watching this that had an interest in a career like yours? What are some potential skills that you might say to that they should start refining, or tips or things you've learned along that path in that early stage?
I think it's important to be persistent and to be very honest about the work you do. So, I think sometimes there's a result that people like to see, but the more important thing is for it to be the true result. And sometimes I think people can lose sight of that, because eventually what's going to stand the test of time is what's real. And so I think it's important to, when you do your experiments and you do your science, to try to be as faithful as possible to what you think is really, really going on, and not try to see something, or just because you want a big discovery or something like that. So I think that is a very important skill, and I guess personal characteristic. And I think also realizing that setbacks are normal. If it was something that was easy to do, then people would just do it. And so if something doesn't work how you expected, that's often where big discoveries are made, right? Because it was something non-obvious, and then you had to do a lot to figure out what was going on there. And so I think not taking for granted that things are going to work out quickly, or work out the first time, and sort of persisting and not getting discouraged, and thinking of ways around the problem or new solutions to the problem, and just having sort of confidence that things will work out in the long run, I think are important traits to cultivate.
That's very good advice.
Very good. Scientist or non-scientist, very good advice.
Most definitely. So I understand that you are expecting a child soon.
Yes. So we have one child already. She's 10 months. And then we're expecting another child in the spring, actually, soon. So
congratulations.
Thank you. So we're hoping everything goes well with that, and really looking forward to it. Every child is a huge life change. So.
Oh yeah, oh absolutely, and they're always different from each other. I have found completely. You can have two and same parents, and they have very different personalities and different traits, and but that's super exciting. Do you know if it's a boy or a girl yet?
So it's going to be a boy. Yes.
Okay,
yes.
So you'll have a girl and a boy.
Yes.
Wonderful.
That's really exciting. Would you mind talking a little bit about that? The reason I'm going to ask this question is we're on February 11th. It's we have a lot of these theme days and months in the scientific communication world, but it's the International Day of Women and Girls in STEM on February 11th. So we've been writing some content related to that, because obviously that is a big part of what makes Bio5 unique, is sort of we're built on this foundation of access and diversity, and celebrating whoever you are and whatever background you're from and whatever knowledge you bring to the table. And that's in the DNA of Bio5. And so I really love this, talking about women and advancement of women and girls in STEM, this idea that debunks that you can't have a family and a successful career, whether it's any career, but much less a scientist or an engineer, and those demanding fields. And I mean, is that something that you just sort of are rolling with, and it's just part of what you knew you wanted? Is that a conscious decision? And how would you, would you give people any advice on that? That you can do both. You can do both.
Yeah. So I always sort of knew I wanted to be like a mom. So I was one of those people who always kind of knew. And I think if I had not become a mom, I would have accepted it. But I always sort of knew that that was sort of what I wanted. And in terms of advice, I would say, so, I don't think people can truly understand, like, I guess, how much work is involved in being a parent until you're actually a parent. I think people will tell you it's a lot of hard work, and then you're like, oh yeah, of course. yeah. But until you actually experience it, it's like a whole new life, right? And so I think the advice I would give to people is, make sure you choose a supportive partner, because I think it would be something that's really difficult to do by yourself. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's something you can make like a really conscious, intelligent decision about whether you think someone is going to be there for you, and to help out. And I say, and ask for help, right? Because, parenting is 24/7, and if you want a job too, you're going to need childcare support. And so I think that's an important thing to realize, that, to try to ask for help within your network and get help as much as possible.
Yeah, as they say, it takes a village, right?
Yeah.
A lot of the time, that's true.
Yeah, and so
try to do it all yourself.
Yeah.
Well, and I respect you. You mentioned you're taking some time off, and that's important, and I respect that too, because I think some people put this pressure on themselves that they're going to miss something, or in their lab they're going to not be involved in that moment of important discovery. And we all have to make our priorities, but I really respect that a balanced priority list, I guess, in terms of family and the scientific career. And I'm glad you're taking that time.
Yeah, I'll still be working, but I'm transitioning,
cutting back
to more remote meetings when I'm around that time the babies do. So.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Well, and that, I guess that's a very good thing that has come out of the pandemic, is we have all realized we can do things in a little bit different way, and maybe still be involved to some degree. So I think that has been maybe a benefit, at least for some of us. Let's see, Amy, do you have any other questions?
I've asked the questions that I had initially in my mind, but I did have one final regarding the grant that you received in 2020. So you're in your second year on that grant. It was a $1.8 million grant?
Yes.
And I was just wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the work you're doing on that grant.
So that is actually a fantastic grant by the National Institutes of Health. It's an R35, and it's called a MIRA, and it funds the body of work in the investigators' lab. And so it offers a lot of flexibility. So, for that, we're using it to fund all of our sort of biomedical sensing work.
I see. Okay.
And so, like, our work on Alzheimer's, our work on cancer, and then our next generation system, like our next generation sensing platform. And so I think that's really fantastic, because it's not tied to like one very specific project, and it allows us flexibility. And so that's a funding mechanism I really, really appreciate.
Yeah, I would imagine. Yeah, that's wonderful. Do you have collaborators that are working with you on the grant, or is it specifically for your group?
Specifically for our group. So it's awarded, it's a single PI grant. And then of course, all of our work that we do, we often have collaborators.
Of course, yeah. Oh, that's great.
Well, did we miss anything, Dr. Su, that you would, anything about your science, about your journey, about your hobbies?
I think when kids come, it's pretty much just work and then family. So,
that becomes a hobby for a long time. Trust me.
No, I really appreciate being here today and having the opportunity to share my work with everyone.
Yeah, we finish these podcasts with kind of a fun question, at least for us. It maybe puts you on the spot a little bit, but we definitely think of our scientists as superheroes, and so we like to ask if you were a superhero, a non-scientific superhero, what would your superpower be?
Oh my gosh, that's if I could have any superpower, it would probably be, and it would probably be the ability to prevent death, I guess. Maybe you could save your loved ones, etc.
Which is essentially what you are attempting to do in a lot of cases, and at least reduce the burden of that, I would say. So that's a superpower you are embracing. We're really thankful for that. So anyways, we'd like to thank you again, Dr. Su, for joining us today. We're looking forward to seeing how your tiny technology transforms the way we detect and treat disease. And we'd like to thank our listeners for being with us today for another episode of Science Talks. For more information, please visit our website at bio5.org. And from all of us at the Bio5 Institute, we'll see you in the next episode.
Thanks to our listeners for tuning in to another episode of Science Talks. Continue the conversation with us next time as we learn more about the amazing science happening at the University of Arizona's Bio5 Institute.